Hello, today I'll be building a Gtk application using Gtk-rs and I'll be trying to make a clone of this website. That's webbuddy360.com. I own it. I'll be making home and info button the left panel. I'll be cloning this one and implementing closures and smart pointers for the same. The final result should look something like this. The info button and the home button changes the label. Okay, so we'll start by creating a new project. Let's use cargo new Gtk project. This will create a binary project for us. Seed into the same. I'll be using JetBrains CLion as my ID of choice. You can use VS Code or a normal text editor like Neowin. So Gtk project. Okay, so I had a Gtk as a dependency and do a plain build, then also do cargo build. Take some time, set the correct version, do cargo build. Okay, so Gtk programs needs to first initialize and then the main loop needs to be run. So between these both, the initialization command and the main, you need to write your Gui code. So let's create a function that initializes a window for us. So function, let's name this get window. Okay. Window, and it will create a Gtk window. You need to do Gtk window new, and it will ask you a window type. So window types are basically a pop-up or a top level. Pop-ups are like confirmation dialogues and top level are the main window. So use top level, set it to win, and now let's set a title bar heading. Set title and let's say it YouTube tutorial. And we need to connect a listener called connect destroy, and in it we need to exit our program. So when the red cross is clicked, it will exit with a status code of 0. And now we need to show it. So show all. Okay, now call the init window. So our basic window is ready, and keep a notice on the imports. A smart way would be to use a asterisk over here, but I won't do that. Okay, so this is our window, top level window with a YouTube tutorial title, and on pressing the close button it does an exit call with a 0 status code. Now we need to add a box. Box is basically a container in Gtk which can have n number of children in it. So in our final result we will have this left panel So what we can do is we can create a box, and inside it we can create two children, that's the left and the right one, and inside the left we can create two buttons, and on the right we can create a label. So to create a box, use a Gtk box new, and the first box needs to be a horizontal one. Okay. You can name it parent, right? And now we have to add it to the window. Pass a reference of parent to the window. This will create a box. Now this parent needs a left pane and the right one. Left pane containing the buttons and the right one containing the label. So you can use a flex box as well, but considering this is a basic video, I'll use a box. So name it the left pane. Do the same initialization using box new, and you should have noticed that I'm using Gtk box new. Use this method. Don't try to import it, because it confuses the box with the inbuilt box pointer. Try to use this one, and we'll do orientation, and this needs to be vertical. Okay. Box also needs one more parameter. That's the one is the orientation, and one's the spacing. That's the amount of children it can have. In our final result, we need to have two panes, so we'll do 2 in the parent, and in the left pane we need to do 4. We are adding 2 buttons, so 4 is because we also need to add some space to center these buttons, and these spaces can be a box that expands vertically infinitely. So we need to create 4 children for the same, right? 2 buttons and 2 spaces. Create a space, let's create space, initialize it in the same way. By now you should have learned how to initialize a box. Okay, and this needs to be vertical, and it will not have any children, so it doesn't need to have a space. And just set it to vexpand. Okay, so vexpand will set it to expand infinitely vertically. Set it to true. You can ask it to expand horizontally infinitely by using set hexpand. We don't need to do that here. Now okay, rename it to space. Now add it to add the space to the left panel. Okay, and this needs to be duplicated to the as the first child, and as the second child, and the last child. Okay, so our spaces are done. We need to create 2 buttons. So Gtk button and new, set add it to the left pane like the spaces. Use add. Okay. Build it, and you'll get a window with the left pane and 2 buttons. Okay, So it's not visible yet because we haven't set the width for the left panel. So the left panel and we haven't added it to parent yet, I think. Yes, we haven't added a left pane to parent yet. So just do parent, that is the parent box dot add and pass the reference of left pane to it. Okay. Take some time to build. Okay, so vertically center align two buttons. Now we need to add home and info images to it, like this one, home and info images. So for that you need to have Gtk and Gtk pixbuff as your dependency. So you need to have Gtk 0.13 and Gtk pixbuff. You could have done with get away with Gtk, but Gtk and Gtk pixbuff allow you to scale the image properly. Okay, so we need to add our image to the button. So set image is a function. It requires a pixbuff and a image wrapper. So we'll create a new image from pixbuff and create some pixbuff from file at scale. Set it to home.svg. That's this file. That's the asset. We'll be drawing it on the button and set it to a size of 25 by 25 pixels, and we'll maintain a aspect ratio. You need to pass a reference for the pixbuff and for the image and unwrap the pixbuff. This will load our home.svg into the button and show it. The same will be true for our info button. Okay, our images are here. Both buttons have our image. Now what we need to do is pass the CSS that colors the background of the left pane. In Gtk, for passing in the CSS, you need to have a CSS provided in a style context. CSS will be initialized using CSS provider new, and it needs to be loaded using load from path, and you need to have a main.css. It can be in any directory. I'll keep it in a root directory of the project, main.css, and wrap it. Now this CSS provider will need to have a context to the screen our window is in. So you need to have a reference to the window. So this function in its CSS asks for a window reference, which will be passed at the time of initialization of the window. Okay, so window, we need to get the screen and get the screen in which our window is in. Wrap it, say screen, and this screen will be passed to a Gtk style context. And add the provider for screen, reference to the screen, reference to the CSS we need to use, and a priority. In Gtk we have several style priorities. We have 4, I think 5 of them. Yeah, One is user level, setting level, fallback, theme, and application. So this CSS for the application and can't be override by the user, so we need to pass the GTK priority application. What we need to do is you need to have a ID for the left pane to be, so you can reference it in the CSS file. Left pane, you can set the ID for any widget in GTK using the name. Set widget name, I'll name it left pane, and this will be referenced to as an ID in our CSS file. Left pane, it needs to have a background color of, I'll set it to this value right here. Okay, and the buttons inside left pane need to be have a background color transparent and no border. We'll set the border to none. Right, sorry, button here. So that's a color and there's no border in the buttons. One more thing we need to do is we need to set the width for left panel. Let's set size request. You can have a width and a height, but we don't need to have an height because it needs to stretch throughout the size of the window vertically. So we'll request a width of 50 pixels. Okay, 50 pixels size. And you also need not have any padding or margin. So the padding to 0, set the margin to 0. This will ensure that any widget won't have a margin and a padding. Okay, so now, and we also need to have a font color to be white. So we are done with the CSS, and now we have to build our right pane. Okay, so the right pane will be done by creating a box of orientation horizontal and spacing 1, only one child is required. Now the right pane will have a name, that is a ID for CSS. Let's name it right name, and our right pane will expand horizontally infinitely. A right pane, we need to add the right pane to the parent, reference to right pane. Okay, the right pane, in a final result the right pane has a color, so you need to add that in the CSS file. This is a tag, right pane tag, background color, and the font size for the label, which we will add in just a while. Okay, so you can see that the right pane has a color, the left pane has two buttons. Now we have to add events on the button, on both the buttons. Before doing that, we need to organize it. Create a function called init left pane, right, and initialize it the same. Return the left pane from the function. a GTK box. Create a function for the right as well. Okay, function init right pane. Okay. So let's create a struct that contains those buttons. Name it left pane elements, a home button, and our about button. Pass in a reference of parent. This GTK box and set parent dot add left pane, and now initialize and return the left pane elements from this function. Okay, now create struct here left pane elements and add missing fields. Do it like this. Just copy and paste it. And return the home button. Do the same for the about button. Left pane elements. Okay, we have initialized and returned the left pane elements to from a function, and now what we have to do is in the initialize window function get the left pane, pass the reference of parent, left pane elements, and then pass it to the right pane. I could do is initialize it in here and take the left pane elements in here. Now the left pane elements, now we have to attach the left pane elements connector. Okay, so connect click closure, and same for the right one. About button. Okay, connect it. Now in this what we have to do is in the right pane we have to add the context, the label for the current pane. So if we try to move the right pane here, we won't be able to return it and use it in the closure of the second button. So what you gotta do is wrap it in RC. That's a reference counting in Rust with a smart pointer, and what it does is allows you to have multiple ownerships of the same thing. So we created a new RC smart pointer of our right pane. We set the properties, and in here what you have to do is the RC smart pointer has a method known as clone. This doesn't clone the data inside the button. All it does is creates one more reference to the box which is of a owned status. It is not a reference which you get out of it of the clone function. You get the ownership of the box without having the actual ownership. Inside it does reference counting, and when all the owners are dropped and the count goes to 0, the box get drops. Okay, now we can easily move it to our closure, and in here we need to pass our label. So just do right pane dot add reference label new sum, and it will say home, and the same for the about button. Let's clone it. Say for the about button, about, do this right pane dot deref. Now we can't, due to this RC we can't return a GTK box from it. So what we will do is take in the reference of the parent, because we need to pass a right pane to the parent as well. So take the reference of the parent and GTK reference box, to parent dot add reference to right pane. Okay. Now we need to edit this a little bit. One more reference to parent, and this should get our job done. Okay. So there is an error. Init right pane, and okay, we know to add this in here. Remove this. Let's build it. Okay, so the problem is that you can't reference it like that. You have to dereference it. It should work. I guess. Okay, so it's not showing us right now because there's one more thing we have to do, and that is that a label should be visible. By default it's not visible when you add it like that. So what you got to do it, let label equals to label new, and set the label to set visible. Okay, set visible to true, and then pass the label reference. Okay. This should do the job now. Let me do the same for the other one. About so it does work, but it will add multiple to it. We need to remove the first one, then add the second one. So you need to check if there's already a child present in the same. So to check that, you need to get a vector of children from a right pane. So the function is of get children, I guess, and it returns a vector. So from the vector you need to call a function get and pass index 0. Now if there is some child, some widget already in the right pane, then you need to remove it. So we'll do this if let some and ask the right pane to remove the widget. Do the same with the home button, and now it won't duplicate. Okay, so we've got our connectors working, we've got our cross button working. I think that's it. In the next video, I guess I'll be doing arc and mutex asynchronous data fetching, and I'll try to duplicate this as much as I could. Thanks for watching.